Christians remain the most persecuted religious group on the planet. Canadians should pause and think about those around the world who would like to celebrate Christmas this year, but cannot. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show. Hi everyone, thank you so much for tuning into The Candice Malcolm Show. I hope everyone is having a wonderful break. I hope that you are getting together, able to gather with your loved ones this Christmas. I know for so many Canadians, they couldn't do it last year. We couldn't travel. We had heavy-handed measures in place where many of us couldn't go to church, we couldn't pray, and we couldn't have loved ones over to our house. We were stuck in the bubble situation, so you could only be gathering with people in your bubble according to government edicts in various jurisdictions around the country. And I think that gave us a little bit of a taste of what it might be like to be a Christian in other parts of the world. You know, we take our freedom of religion so much for granted that sometimes it's even hard to wrap our heads around the idea that so many Christians around the world cannot celebrate Christmas. They can't. And we often hear about persecuted religious groups, and I don't know that people always connect the fact that many, if not most, of the world's persecuted religious people are in fact Christians. So I want to get into that a little bit on the show today. I have a wonderful guest joining me. My guest today is Majed El Shafie. Majed is a human rights advocate and the president and founder of One Free World International. Majed's human rights journey, his own human rights journey, began in Egypt when he was forced to flee after being tortured and sentenced to death for his conversion to Christianity. He eventually made it to Canada and has since decided to devote his life to helping others. He uses his firsthand experience as a survivor of religious persecution to help others. One Free World International, his organization, is one of the leading organizations advocating for religious freedoms and minorities around the world. They have 28 branches in countries all over. They've helped individuals in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, Israel, Cuba, India, and Bangladesh, to name a few. So, Majed, it's such an honor to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your organization and what specifically you do?
One Free World International is a human rights organization focusing on the freedom of religion around the world. We have branches in more than 28 different countries. We're the lead organization in Canada when we're dealing with the freedom of religion issues. Basically, our organization fighting in the front lines, focusing on four different parts, which is, or four different missions, which is basically risking missions to get the persecuted Christians out of the critical situation, humanitarian aid, and advocating on their behalf and helping them resettling upon their arrival to Canada or North America in general. Just to understand, and for everybody to understand, there is one persecuted Christian every 3 minutes worldwide. Just last year, over 165,000 Christians was killed for their faith. More than 200 to 300 million persecuted Christians worldwide. They don't make it to the news, to the mainstream news, and you don't hear their stories, sadly. We would like to focus on other minorities, but no Christians for some reasons. That's our media. In One Free World International, we care about every minority. We care about every human being that's facing persecutions, not just Christians, but everybody. The situation One Free World International was created and exists because I used to be one of them. I was Muslim converted to Christianity back home in Egypt. I was arrested severely. I created human rights organization there. I was arrested. I was tortured severely. I was tortured for 7 days in the Egyptian prison. They hanged me upside down. They took my nails off. They cut me with a knife in the back of my shoulder. I put salt and lemon in the open wound. They crucified me. They released 3 dogs that they didn't attack me because God was with me. I saw God in the midst of persecution. And I know that God exists, and as he dies for us, we will live and will die for him. So One Free World International did not exist because this is my job. It exists because that's my calling upon my life. So when I founded One Free World International, to fight for others that used to be in the same position like myself.
Wow, that's such an incredible story, Majed. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So can you walk us through the state of Christians, specifically in the region that you came from in the Middle East? Because when I think back to countries like Egypt, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, they were a place of different groups living side by side. I know there was once a sizable Christian population in Egypt. There was once a sizable Jewish population as well. So what has happened to Christians and other religious minorities in Egypt and the broader Middle East, and why?
Well, in reality, that there was the majority of Egypt was Christians actually. In the 7th century, when a Muslim leader by the name of Umar ibn al-As, he entered Egypt and he forced most of the Christians to convert to Islam. And there was around 30 million Christians at the time. You know what I mean? Now we are maybe 10% of the population of Egypt. So this is something that happens all around the Middle East, where the Muslim extremism like to take over and basically punish the minorities and force them to convert to Islam, or killing them or punishing them in another ways to force them out. We saw this in Iraq, we saw this in Egypt, we saw this in Iran, we saw this in many countries around the world that they are based Muslim countries. And today we see this happening in Afghanistan. Today we see Taliban took over, and the first thing that Taliban is doing is basically hunting down the Christians, hunting down the Hazaras, hunting down the women and children, especially women that want to receive education. We see them hunting down the minorities. But Christians really is the canary in the coal mine. The minute that you see persecution happening to the Christians is immediately mean that every other minority will be persecuted as well immediately, and especially as well the minority, female minorities. The right will be taken away immediately as well. So we see this happening in Afghanistan, and One Free World International preparing a mission in a matter of few days to go there in the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan in an order to help with the refugees and to help with the persecuted Christians to get out of Afghanistan if this is necessary.
Wow, that's incredible. I know Afghanistan was all over the news earlier this year, and the sad story of the Taliban taking over. I wanna ask you though, with all of this persecution happening, with all of this horrible treatment of Christians, you mentioned that it doesn't really make the legacy media. When we in Canada hear about refugees, we're often hearing about Muslim refugees that are being forced out of Muslim majority countries, but we don't often hear about the treatment of Christians. So I just wonder, why is it that the Canadian government and the legacy media in Canada and the US and throughout Europe and the West, why don't they focus on the plight of Christian people in this region?
I think it's a white guilt. I don't know if this is a politically correct statement to make, but I'm not really politically correct. I believe it's a white guilt. So basically, the West and Canada and United States and so on, they are countries that build on a Christian and Jewish values, according to our Bible. And I don't understand why Christians is not something like when our Canadian government is speaking about minorities in Afghanistan, they never mention the Christians. And I think it's really quite rubbish politically correctness that in our Canadian society. And the politically correctness, just to make it clear, is not just in Canada, is in the United States, is in England, is in most of Europe and Australia and so on. I think is a cancer in our Western society. We have to speak the truth. We have to be proud of who we are. We have to understand that, there is no race can be blamed for every crime on earth. We have to move forward, and politically correctness is the very cancer that will destroy our Canadian fabric and our Western fabric. And I think we just need to get out of that and face the truth and speak the truth.
I really appreciate that. I love Canada, and I wish that more of our political leaders would be patriotic and proud of Canada. Yes, we have errors in the past, we've made horrible mistakes, there's been bad policies and bad leaders, but fundamentally, we're doing something right, and just the very fact that people are still coming from all over the world to come to Canada, they're fleeing persecution to find safety in Canada, that's a sign, a good sign. So I wanted to ask you as well, because I remember when ISIS was sort of ravaging Syria and Iraq, and they were committing genocide against the Yazidis in the Sinjar mountain region. And your group played a leading role, a pivotal role in helping those Yazidi, specifically Yazidi women who were the victim of slavery. You helped them escape. A tremendous, tremendous story. Helped them resettle in Canada. I'm wondering if you could tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about how you helped the Yazidis and what you did for those women.
Well, when ISIS entered in Yazidi territories and Sinjar Mountain and so on, and all of these areas, they kidnapped more than 7,000 girls. They raped them. They used them as sex slaves. It was the most horrible crime that we witness in our modern history, folding in front of our eyes on the TV and the social media. And it was horrible genocide. And our organization was on the ground immediately. We was able to rescue more than 600 girls. We was able to help resettling much more families here, advocating on their behalf with the Canadian government. The Canadian government, that the Liberal government that refused to recognize this as a genocide 3 times in our Canadian Parliament before the UN recognized it as a genocide, is the most horrible thing. And here the Canadian government receiving more than 40,000 Syrian refugees and only 900 Yazidis. I mean, it's just, it's based on purely politically correctness and voting system. The Yazidis is a small little group, so nobody care about their voting voices. But when we're dealing with the 40,000 Syrians, you're satisfying the Muslim community per se, or you're getting them to vote for you once they are the 3 years mark and so on. I think we have really to focus on the most vulnerable minorities and to bring them here. We're talking about Yazidis, Christians, Baha'is, Ahmadiyyas, Uyghurs, Falun Gong, Tibetans. We are talking about many minorities that deserve to be here, to be rescued. And Canada is the land of the free, is the land of the refugee and the temple of human rights. And I really encourage our government to do more for the minorities, and instead of being politically correct.
Isn't it funny, Majed? Justin Trudeau is more than happy to say that Canada commits genocide. He even said that Canada is currently committing genocide against First Nations peoples, and yet when there's overwhelming evidence of a genocide happening committed by ISIS, one of the most despicable organizations we've ever seen, for some reason, to your point, there was 3 votes, and they said no 3 times. I know you sort of alluded to the idea of voting blocks and trying to appease a broader population of Arab Muslims, but I mean, can you help us understand why the Canadian government, the federal government, Justin Trudeau, the feminist, the person who's supposed to be the champion of refugees, why he wouldn't recognize these awful crimes as being what they were, which was genocide?
I think Justin Trudeau is the only one can answer this question. But from my understanding and from what I've been reviewing, and just my humble opinion anyway, I think if he did, he will upset maybe some sectors in the Muslim religion or from the Muslim community, because ISIS, of course, is standing for the Islamic State. And we understand that this is maybe will not be politically correct. Maybe there is the international obligation for Canada to do more. So he was worried about that. Maybe he was worried to upset few of the Muslim countries as well. I cannot really understand our prime minister per se. The Bible said, pray for our prime minister, pray for our government. And I do this daily. I pray for Justin Trudeau daily. I pray that he will resign, quite honestly. Just, that's my prayer. The Canadian government, we have to understand something. The Canadian government have to listen to Canadians. And we become the silent minority, the silent majority. The Canadian government have to understand, and any government, I don't care if you are liberal or conservative or green or NDP or whatever you are, listen to your people. Don't worry about politically correctness right now. This is how the beginning of a disaster of taking away our rights. We see what's happening in Brexit. We see what's happened in when Donald Trump won the election in the White House. It was the silent majority, and many people will blame the extreme right wing for stuff like this. I tell them, no, blame the left, that they just keep choking us and not listening to our voices, that now we become the majority that become forced to be silenced. And I advise everybody, listen to us. There is no left and right. We're all Canadians. We're all in the same boat. Listen to our voice and see the true pain of the people, and then you will really become the champion of the people.
Well, amen to that, Majed. A final question for you. So you come from Egypt. I'm not sure how long you've been in Canada for, but I'm wondering, it's Christmas, and so many Christians around the world have slightly different traditions and things that they do to celebrate. So I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about you, your family, your community. What specifically do you do to celebrate Christmas?
Well, Christmas is the most sensitive time of the year for the persecuted Christians, and many people doesn't know that. But the attacks on Christians actually increases tremendously during Christmas time. So think about that while you're going around the tree, Christmas trees and gifts under the trees and Santa Claus. And I pray and I bless everyone enjoying Christmas with your family. Please enjoy it. It's a precious, precious, precious time. But from December 24 until January 7, which is the Orthodox Christmas, this is the period that Christians been attacked severely. And just last year, I think 26 countries, Christians was attacked during Christmas ceremonies in 26 countries, especially Nigeria, Egypt, North Korea, Iran, in many, many countries. It's a long list of countries that have been attacked, Sudan. So we are expecting attacks during this time. So the majority of time during Christmas and New Year and all the way to January 7, our organizations are just focusing on monitoring the situation around the world and presenting as much help as possible as we can.
Okay, well, I said that was the last question, but I did have one final question, Majid. For our viewers, for people watching who really feel concerned, deep levels of concern, and want to help, what can we do to help support the work you do and help support your organization?
Well, basically, the first thing I will ask is a prayer. And I know that everybody say that, and some people mean it, some people they don't. Prayer really make a difference, more than you can ever imagine. I saw miracles happens because prayers. And people, when they pray, God listen, really listen, and He sees our heart. The second thing, just go on our website, onefreeworldinternational.org or ofwi.org. Just go on our website. You found donation section. Give to the organization. This is Christmas season, and I'm not shy or ashamed to say it. Give, and instead of buying silly gifts and just throwing it in a garbage later on, give the gift of life. Give to the people so we can able to help them, to rescue them, and be able to make a difference. Don't wait for a miracle. Be one. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Majid. It's an honor to have you on. I hope that I encourage listeners to go and find that website, One World International. We'll provide a link and give what you can. Majid, Merry Christmas. God bless you. Thank you for all the work that you do.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. God bless you all.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show.